Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Blender Basics course. Okay, so this is the third video, and this one we're going to be looking at editing a mesh. So, what do I mean by editing a mesh? Well, so far, we've been able to navigate around Blender and stuff like that, and we've been able to do basic transformations on these objects. For example, moving it around, or scaling it, or rotating it, whatever. But we haven't been able to do any kind of detailed manipulation of the mesh yet, because we're really just able to do very large, uh, uh, manipulations that are more on the outside. What about, the nitty gritty? What if we want to really move around the actual shape of it more specifically? So, for example, let's say instead of just, manipulating the whole thing, we want to do, for example, and of course I'll show you how to do this in a minute. What if we wanted to, for example, make just the ears larger or something like that, and you know, something like that, which we couldn't do before in our object view. We could only make the whole thing bigger or smaller. Well, now we want to start moving around different parts. Okay, so how do I do that, and what did I just do? Well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of Suzanne here, and we're going to look at something a lot simpler. I'm going to add back a cube. I'm going to do a shortcut that I didn't show you before. When I added objects, I was always going to this menu and using it. However, it's a lot faster to go Shift A. That gives you the mesh or the object menu right away to add things. So I'm going to add in a cube. And there's our famous cube. Now, up until this point, we have always been, first of all, we've only been in this menu called layout. The layout menu. That's the menu that you have when you first open up Blender. There are obviously a lot of these other menus that we're going to get to later on, all this stuff, but we'll get to it later. After we get the basics, we'll start looking at those different windows. For now, though, we're at this layout menu, which is kind of the basic big scale. You can see everything, and it's your basic default menu. We're also on something called object mode. And you might not have seen this, but if you look in the upper left corner, there is something that says object mode. It's a little menu, and it's actually a drop-down menu, which there are many different choices. And so, for example, we're going to be looking at edit mode today. So object mode is when you want to add objects and manipulate them and look at the whole scene without really changing any specifics about the models. So far we've only been in object mode. Well, now we're going to go into the under the hood, as they say, into the back end. We're going to go into edit mode. As soon as we go into edit mode, first of all, to go into edit mode, we need to actually choose an object, and an object that is editable. So if I put back the camera, you're going to see that if I put this in, there is no editing mode. You can't actually change the shape of the camera. It's not that kind of an object. It's not a mesh that you can manipulate. Same thing with this light. I can't edit the light. There's no editing of the light. The settings are in other menus. But this is called a mesh, which means it's an object that you can actually manipulate and model and shape. So this is something that we can edit. And hey, look at all the menus we have because this is an editable object. So if we go into edit mode, we now see we have all this stuff that we didn't really see before, including these little corner points. So if I go here, little dots like that. We have these little lines that connect the dots, and we have these little faces that basically are the planes of the object. Now I want to show you a quick shortcut first of all. Notice that to get from object to edit mode, I went to this little drop-down menu. Object mode, notice you cannot see the vertices now. Edit mode, now I can. I can see all the parts of the model. Well, it's a lot faster to just press the tab key. So I select the object that I want, and if I want to go into edit, I just press tab. Suddenly now I'm in edit mode. If I want to get out, I press tab again, and I'm back. So going from object to edit and back to object is tab. It's much faster to just press tab. So I select my object, I press tab. Now I'm under the hood. I can see the mechanisms of this thing that I'm working on. Now, for any 3D mesh, there are basically three aspects or three components. There are the vertices, which are the corners. There are the edges, which are the lines that connect the corners. And there are what is called the faces, which is the kind of large areas, the rectangles or the squares. I'm going to get rid of this little cursor because it's a little bit annoying. We don't need it. Okay, so let's go through one by one. First of all, if you look over here, we have vertices. This is called vertex mode. It means that I'm only able to manipulate the vertices. Vertex is one corner, vertices are many corners, 2 or more. Vertice is plural. So vertex mode. If I press this, it highlights the lines. This is called edge mode. And if I press this, it highlights the faces. This is called face mode. For now, what I'm going to do, since I want to look at all the different parts, is I'm going to click on, this is already clicked, I'm going to press Shift and click on this and on this. Pressing Shift and clicking multiple things in Blender allows you to select multiple items. So once again, let's unclick these. Let's say I'm on vertex mode and I want to select more and not undo that. Select multiple things at the same time. Press down Shift, as you see, and then just select that and that. Now all of them are selected, which means I can basically select either edges or vertices or faces. So for now, we're going to keep all 3 of these buttons on. Okay, so a vertex is the corner point. Basically, it's a corner. Like for example, on a triangle, you have 3 vertices, all the 3 corners. On a square, you have 4. On on a pentagon, you have 5. Etc. Hexagon, you have 6. So in this case, this is a cube, so we have a lot more than we have 8, in fact. So we have 8 vertices in here, the corner points. The lines connecting the corners, or the other vertices, are called the edges. Edges aren't lines, so you notice that there are many edges in this. I'm not going to try to count them, although I probably could. I don't really want to. And there are many edges, each connecting 2 vertices. And the last one we have are the faces, which are basically the sides of the cube. And it's a cube, so there's 6 faces, right? The 4 sides, the top and the bottom. Now, each of these things can be manipulated. So let's select a vertex. Now remember, when we learned about object mode, we learned to move something was G. It's exactly the same thing in edit mode. So if I select this vertex and I want it to move, I press G and I now am able to move it. And let's say I want to only move this vertex left or right, GX. Like before, I'm controlling the movement along one axis. Or for example, GZ, and now I'm able to push this thing up and down. So the same functions you use for the object mode are used for editing mode. Now let's say I want to, for example, select this edge here, and I want to move it forwards along the y-axis, GY. And now it looks like a sand people, the thing that the sand people drove in Star Wars. A sand crawler. So let's say I want to now select multiple things. Remember what I did before when I selected one, pressed Shift and selected a bunch? That same exact thing works with any selection in Blender. If I want to select more than one thing at the same time. So let's say I want to select these 2 vertices. One, I press Shift now and I select the other. Now I've selected both of them and I can move them both at the same time. Of course, I could do that with as many as I want. I can select all 3, and now I'm moving all 3 of these. Basically, pressing Shift allows you to select multiple things at the same time. All right, so now let's say I want to scale, because so far we moved with G, we can also scale. For example, we could scale this edge. This edge connects these 2. If I press S right now, it's going to enable me to make that line bigger or smaller. And since it's only along one axis, it's just going to do that. It becomes smaller or it becomes bigger. So I'm able to scale edges. I am not able to scale vertices. Because the vertex is just a dot, I can't actually scale it, but I can scale. Okay, so now we have scale and we have grab, move. I can also rotate things. If I press this, I could press R and I'm rotating this. And of course I could rotate it along the different axes. So if I want to press R and Z, I'm now rotating it along the Z axis and making some kind of weird twisty thing. If I want to take, for example, this edge and I want to rotate it around the Z axis, the same thing. I can rotate the edges. I cannot rotate vertices. The only thing I can do with the vertices is to move them with G. Because they're basically infinitely small dots. I can move them, but I can't do anything else. However, the edges and the faces, I can scale them and rotate them and move them. And of course, along whatever axis I want. Now, a very important concept in 3D modeling is called edge loops, or loops in general. A loop is exactly what it means. Imagine a loop on a shoe, or imagine a loop like this on the wire here. Basically, a loop is something that goes all the way around. You're going to see that edge loops and face loops are very important in 3D modeling. So, for example, if we wanted to select all of these, all the edges, all the faces that go around this cube, like this, I could just hold down Shift and select all of them. Well, let me just do it again. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's already selected. I'm not really sure what's going on. What I'm going to do here, just to be sure, is I'm going to delete this cube and do another one. Get a nice clean cube because I think I messed it up somehow and I really don't want to try to do it again. All right, so I'm actually going to click off everything except for faces, so I'm only working on faces. If I want to click these 4, I've created basically a loop around the box, kind of a horizontal loop. I could also make a loop like this. Imagine it's kind of like a band going around the object. However, it's clearly annoying to try to select each one of these things. So instead of doing it like that, the way you select loops is, this is not very intuitive, but I'll explain it to you. You take your mouse and you put it on an edge between the faces, basically perpendicular to the direction that you want the loop. If I want the loop to be horizontal, I'm going to take my mouse and put it on this edge, and then I'm going to click Alt. Hold down Alt and then click on it. And you notice it selected the entire loop of faces. This is called a face loop. If I wanted to select that loop, again, I would go on, since I'm selecting a loop that's going basically vertically, this is the edge that's perpendicular. I go on that edge, I don't click anything, I press Alt, and now I click, and now I have that loop clicked. That loop selected. That's a face loop. So those are called face loops. Now I can also do edge loops. Now there are no, so far, for reasons which I'll explain to you later, there are no actual edge loops on this cube so far. However, I'm going to make one. And then I'm going to show you how to make one after. But first I'm just going to make one and then I'm going to move it around. All right. This is now an edge loop, which I'll show you how I just did that in a minute. To select an edge loop, now I could just go that, I'm pressing Shift, and that. But of course, that's very boring and cumbersome. Instead, I go on top of it, I press Alt, and I select it. Now I've selected the entire edge loop by pressing Alt. Now, because I've selected the edge loop, you're going to see that I can do things that are kind of potentially useful. For example, I could scale the entire edge loop like that, making shapes that are sort of symmetrical like that. I could bevel it, which I'm going to show you in the next video. I could do many different things. I could rotate this, basically because I'm controlling all the edges at the same time. So let me go back here. Now, Alt, click on it, and now you've selected the edge loop. Now I want to show you what I did before. In order to create an edge loop, which is something you will be doing a lot, you go on a perpendicular edge. Let's say I want an edge going across here, another one like that. I click on this edge here, which is perpendicular. I want one going like that, so I'm clicking on an edge that's perpendicular. And now I press Control and R. I'll do it again. Control R. This gives me a loop going all the way around. Now, when you click it the first time, it gives you the option of moving it up and down. Let's say I want it there, and now I click, and now it's accepted. Now, if I press Alt, I have an edge loop going all the way around. I've added an edge loop. And you're going to see that when you're creating models, especially hard surface models or any type of models, you're going to be constantly adding edge loops to allow you to do more and more refined shaping. Let me go back and I'll show you another thing you can do. Let's say instead of adding one edge loop, I click that and I press Control R, exactly like before. Whoops, sorry about that. Instead of having just one edge, I want to have 3. Well, what you can do is move the mouse wheel. By just moving the mouse wheel, I'm able to add more than one edge loop. In fact, I can add as many as I want. Right now, I'm going to add 3. And now I click. And now it gives me the option to move it up and down. Well, I could do that. Let's say I'm going to move them all down like that. And now that I click again, they're still highlighted. I can still change things, but I'm going to accept it. Now I have 3 more edge loops. So once again, I'll do that exact same thing again. I click on that, I press Control R, and now before doing anything, I scroll and I add as many edge loops as I want. Let's say I want to have just 2 in this case. Now I click once, I can leave it as it is or I can move it up and down. Let's say I do like that. And now when I click off, now it's basically, it's created. It's been accepted. Now I'm going to do something that you might have noticed what was going on here. I'm going to add another edge loop, but now I want you to look at the lower left corner when I do this. Okay, click on this thing. I add this Control R, right? And I'd say I click on it. Now, I want you to see, I'll put it over here. Look at this. First of all, let me move my, I'm going to turn off the screencast keys for a second so you can see this. Anytime you do a transformation in Blender, a little box on the lower left-hand corner pops up. And sometimes it's not very obvious and you might not even see it. In this case, there's a lot of information, so you saw a lot of stuff. Often it just looks like this. And you don't even pay attention to it. But if you open that box up, it gives you all of these other options that are often very, very useful. So right now, I haven't accepted it yet. It's still kind of, I'm still making this edge loop. So I can select multiple 3, 4, 5 with this box. Instead of doing the scroll wheel, I can be much more precise and select it with this box. Let's say I want to have 5, and then there's all these other options that I don't really care about for now. So I selected 5 and I selected and it's great. I've accepted it. And now you see I have a lot of different edge loops. I can do all these sorts of weird things, which we'll get to next time. But it also, you can see that it allows me to do a lot more sort of specific manipulation of things, unlike, when I only had 4 faces. Now I can clearly get in there and do a much more detailed shaping of this weird cube, which still looks like a cube. For example, I'll just randomly just do a couple of things now. I could just take this, I can move this around, I can take this and this. I'll select a bunch of stuff here. I'll move this like this. I'll take this, I'll extrude Z. I'm just doing a bunch of weird stuff. I can take this one over here and move it over here. Basically, you see that I can have a lot, I don't even know what this thing is that I made, but you could do a lot more detailed modeling, obviously, when you're in this editing mode, because you're able to manipulate vertices, edges, and faces, and you're able to add geometry. You're able to add faces and stuff by making these edge loops. In the next video, we'll talk about beveling and extruding.